Hello, everyone. I am so excited to have on, I don't know, I guess I'm going to call you like a power couple of reselling. This is My Reseller Genie, otherwise known as Paul and Faith. Thank you guys so much for coming on my channel.
Thank you so much for having us, Becky. We're really excited to be here.
Oh man, and I think people are also going to be super excited when they see how My Reseller Genie ties into taxes, because if there are other resellers like me, it's like freak out mode. It's like, oh God, like the deadline is approaching and I have not started. And I know that this is especially a tool that can help a lot with that. So I guess that kind of takes me into my first question for you guys. Can you tell us what is My Reseller Genie and why do all resellers need this product in their lives?
Yeah, so My Reseller Genie is a accounting software that's built specifically for resellers. So think of us kind of like QuickBooks, but we only care about resellers. So that's relevant for taxes. Taxes are on everyone's mind right now.
Yes.
Because you need a consolidated place with all of your information so you can print out reports and either give it to your accountant or fill out your tax form. And then after tax season is actually relevant too. A lot of people don't necessarily think accounting has other purposes other than taxes, but knowing what's going on in your business is a huge reason to use a bookkeeping program like My Reseller Genie. Awesome.
And I feel like most like maybe seasoned resellers and just kind of like okay, I'm not going to say responsible human beings because I don't want to make people feel bad, because I actually did not use a bookkeeping software for a long time. But there are a lot of people out there who maybe are familiar with that terminology and with what a bookkeeping software is and whatnot. But can you talk us through a little bit like what specifically within Reseller Genie is going to help people when it comes to tax season, but also, like you said, post-tax season? Just what does it have within it that's going to help resellers understand their business and their numbers better?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, a big thing is having all of your information in one place. So all of your sales, all of your expenses, if you track inventory, all of your inventory, because what you can do once you have everything consolidated is you can create reports. So you can see, oh, okay, during, what are we in? We're in February. All right, so February of 2023, what are my sales?
It's 2024 now, sir. Oh, but you're talking about last year?
It's late where we're at.
I know my brain doesn't work anymore, but no, keep going. But just so you know, it is the year 2024.
That's good to remember.
You're welcome. Yes.
So yeah, you can look at your February 2024 sales and say, okay, what was it like this time last year? And then in Genie, at least, you can hit a button that says compare data and then pick February 2023, and you can see side by side just to compare, like, okay, how's my business doing now versus a year ago?
Yeah.
Like prompt a whole bunch of questions, which you can dig into more if you have your information organized. And that gives you a lot of insight into your business and helps with decision making.
Yeah, and something I would like to add to that is, if you sell on multiple platforms, which a lot of us resellers today do, we're trying to diversify and everything. It can be really, really hard to figure out just how profitable you really are, and how much you're spending in fees, because platform fees and everything. And I think it's easy for a lot of us to think, oh, I can just track all that in my head, or I have a pretty good handle on it. But we've talked to a lot of resellers now, and I want to say 9 out of 10, probably 9.9 resellers out of 10 would say that, they used to think that they could keep it all in their head and track everything correctly. But as soon as they write the numbers down or put it on paper, put it in accounting software, they realize, oh my goodness, my numbers were way off in my head. So just having, that record of, pulling in all of your data from, across all selling platforms and seeing, okay, I'm actually turning a profit, or, oh, maybe I'm actually not doing so great and I need to cut back on certain things.
Which is really powerful because numbers don't lie. We can create narratives around our reselling business as much as we want and say, oh, I'm doing really good on this platform, or, whatever things we want to make up in our heads. But the cold, hard facts that numbers provide, like you're saying, that's what's going to help us make really well-informed decisions regarding our businesses moving forward. So that is super powerful. And I know when we had talked in the past too, you guys had stated that like you can put information in My Reseller Genie regarding like mileage, and it's just a nice one-stop shop place to like just put all of your numbers somewhere so that you don't have a random like Google sheet here, and then like a random file folder of like receipts over here. Like everything is in one spot, which just for some people, I imagine would help give them a little bit more peace of mind, And I know from talking to you guys too, it seems like the only reason that, again, as like a power couple of the reselling community, that you two specifically could make something like My Reseller Journey is because of your specific backgrounds. Paul, it seems like you're coming from an accounting background, and Faith, you have experience with reselling and whatnot. Can you tell us a little bit about how those two worlds kind of merge to create and dictate the choices that you made in order to create My Reseller Journey? Oh, My Reseller Journey. My Reseller Genie. Sorry, my brain is...
Your genie journey. There you go.
Yeah, it's your genie journey.
No, for sure. So, yeah, I always love just, kind of sharing just a little bit about our backgrounds, because this company was really birthed out of a desire to help other people because of a need that I had, because of a need that we had and stuff. So, basically I started reselling, we're coming up on 8 years, I think, about 8 years ago. I had to stop my full-time job due to health reasons, which at first was rough, but then as I got into reselling, I just fell in love with it. And I feel like that's all of our stories. You go to the Goodwill or, the thrift store for the first time and you are just sold, unless you're Paul or the spouse. And usually it's hard to find two people. Well, no, I guess that's not true. There's a lot of reselling couples out there who are both doing reselling. But anyway, I fell in love with it. I didn't have the gift. That's true. Yeah. The gift of sorting through all of the racks and racks of clothes.
It's a lot. It takes a lot of patience. Yeah.
It really does.
For sure.
Yeah.
So I quickly fell in love with reselling, and just to kind of shorten this story, my first tax season rolled around, and I'm married to an accountant, bad wife over here. I was not tracking any of my numbers at all, and if I just had to put it simply, tax season was a nightmare. And so then entering Paul, and I'll let you take over.
Yeah. So I mean, with reselling, like, the most complicated part of the business is inventory. There's so much inventory, and then there's so many sales from so many different places. So getting that worked out was kind of a big problem. So I made her a spreadsheet to start, where I feel like that's where most people start out, with a spreadsheet. They're great tools. And it worked for her for a while.
It was great.
It was helpful for her to have some technical support on staff.
Yes.
So, I mean, fast forward to COVID, and so like at work, we had to lay off like half of our company.
Oh, that's
Fortunately, I kept my job, but lost hours because, there's just less to account for when the company's cut in half. So I lost some hours, and, we had to make some pay cuts. Very grateful for that company. They took such great care of me, but it did leave kind of a void in our financial life. So that's when we started looking for like ways to supplement. And that's when My Reseller Genie was created.
And what year was that? So it was during COVID, it sounds like.
Yeah. So 2020.
2020. Yeah.
I think we officially launched like July 6th, 2020. Because
Yeah.
we started as like a really souped up spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And then after selling that for 6 months or so, we started working on the web app.
Yeah.
And we were in beta testing March of 2021. And then the full version was released in like November 2021, October, November.
And I just want to just backtrack just for a second, because, like I was talking a little bit about my journey and how stressed I was before I had a system, to account for everything. But, as I was reselling, I was joining different Facebook groups and, on Instagram, and kind of just hearing from other resellers. And I think it's really, really easy as a reseller to think that maybe a weakness you have is just your weakness and nobody else struggles with that. If you've been in the reselling world long enough, you realize that accounting and numbers, it's usually not a strong suit of the majority of us. So I quickly came to realize with, being in these groups and stuff that, I'm not the only one who has no idea what I'm doing. And not just that, but people are actually really stressed to the point of like having meltdowns. They're terrified of getting audited, all of these things. And so, I was taking all of this, information out here, these conversations that I was hearing from different resellers. And I just kind of, honed it all in. And I was like, Paul, like when COVID hit, I was like, Paul, like, I really think that there's an opportunity to help people with this, because there's not a lot of great options out there for resellers. So why don't we take what you kind of made me, and let's kind of beef it up, make it better, and offer it to the reselling community.
And, the smart thing about that is, this is not the first bookkeeping product to be created and to exist. But for resellers, some of the other products that are available, there's almost like too many bells and whistles. There's almost too many options, or there aren't the specific ones that resellers need. And so it's still overwhelming. It's like, okay, I've got this great tool at my fingertips, but I don't know what to do with it because there's just so much going on. And I think that's why this is so unique, like you're saying, is because it's a perfect marriage of, you know, the reseller side of things and the kinds of numbers that resellers need to keep track of. You know, you were talking, Paul, about all of the inventory, like where did you get this stuff? How much did you pay for it? How much did it cost to drive out there? When you sold it, like what were the fees? And, you know, all that kind of stuff. And it's just a little bit more user-friendly because it's geared towards the reseller. This isn't something that like a chef would want to use for like their restaurant or like, you know, but again, that's what makes it so special, I think. But I have so many questions for you guys based on all the things that you said. Faith, do you mind my asking, what was your job before you went into reselling?
Yeah, no, not at all. So I actually was an administrator at a church for a while, and then I moved to nannying because I absolutely love children. And so when I had to stop for reselling, I was nannying full time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so, Paul, I kind of got the vibe that like sourcing is not your favorite thing, but like how much are you involved in like the reselling business with Faith?
I am involved to whatever extent I need to be. So I've packaged a sale while Faith was away. That was exciting.
My husband has had to do that before too. Yes. Yeah.
I was very impressed by her process because she had everything down to just these steps. And it made me feel like I was actually good at what I was doing, which I wasn't. But she had it systematized enough that a total newbie could come in and do a pretty good job.
She set you up for success.
Yeah. So I mean, I'll carry bags in from the car. I will.
He's run stuff to the post office for me, and I do bring him along to sourcing every once in a while. And
I'll do my best.
He's a good sport. He really, really is. And then about 10 minutes in, he's struggling a little bit.
Yeah. And I mean, you got to work them up. Like, I think my husband started at 10. He's at about an hour, I'd say. And then he's like,
good.
I know. But and then he's like, so you're still looking? And I'm like, yeah, like, there's a lot more to look at. Like, I don't understand. And he's like, yeah, I'll just like sort through the stuff in this cart. I'm like, okay, you do you. By the way, I'm going to come across as a very stereotypical Asian mom right now, but the kids, someone is practicing piano upstairs. So if you hear something, that's what's happening in our home right now.
I'm a musician too, so I love that. I really respect that. So
yes, I don't know who told them to do that, but someone's being a good little kid up there and practicing. So if that bleeds into this, that's what's going on. And Paul, I would love to hear kind of what you were thinking when it was that first tax season after Faith started reselling, and she said, here, like, I don't even know if she said here. I don't even know if she had saved receipts or.
I was crying. We'll say that. I was crying.
I want to know kind of what was going on in your head. Just like, what were the feelings, you know? Because I know what my feelings are, because I think in this regard, Faith, you and I are the same person, where it's just like, I'm just going to make money and it's going to be awesome. And then Paul's like, but like, what about all? So yeah, like talk us through kind of what was going on in your head.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the nice things about working in accounting is it kind of, you know, it gives you a lot of exposure to accounting. And so things are less scary, and it's more of like, how do I figure this puzzle out? So, you know, when Faith presented, you know, here's my issues, it was not so much of like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? It's just like, okay, what do we need to do? Here's how we go about doing it. And so, like, honestly, I didn't do that much work, relatively speaking.
He kind of knew what to do.
I just kind of sequenced the steps. I was like, okay, here's what you need to do. And she did it.
Yeah.
And it's like, it was a lot of work for her. But it was kind of cool for me to see like, oh yeah, we give you these steps and then you do the work, and it's like, it's all better now. And now you just need to stay on top of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the exciting thing about accounting is, sorry, that's a funny statement to make.
Go for it. Do it.
Well, I mean, like the thing is, it doesn't have to be that bad.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So like getting caught up, it sucks. It does.
Mhm.
But once you're caught up, staying on top of it is not that bad.
It's actually fun. And this is coming from somebody who doesn't like technical numbers, all that. It just does not come, first nature to me at all. So it's fun though. Like when you can just keep up with it and see, oh, wow, look at how much more like profitable, like that's the key word. Look at how much more profitable I am this month than I was last month, or, things like that.
Yeah. Like you feel better about yourself. You have more just internal peace.
Yep. You're
'cause
empowered.
Yeah, you know what's going on with your business.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like My Reseller Genie, I keep wanting to say My Reseller Journey now, but My Reseller Genie is appropriate for people who maybe, like Faith 8 years ago, are like, oh my God, like I just have all these things, but I have no system in place and I have to file my taxes. It's appropriate for that person who, like you said, it's the person who needs to get caught up, but also appropriate for kind of the seasoned, like they have some sort of system, or it seems like it's a really great way to create systems, like this can be their system. Like, hey, all you have to do is when you come home from a sourcing trip, like let's just sit down for 10 minutes and input all the information regarding this trip. And so by the time the next tax season rolls around, it's not quite so scary. Would you say that it's appropriate for both groups of people, like the Faith from 8 years ago slash or like, versus the kind of more seasoned reseller?
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, our goal is to take people who are starting out scared and without anything and turn them into someone who feels confident and has a system that they can just continuously execute on.
Awesome. And I do want to take a moment to say that, I think just again, as resellers, I think we all freak out about very specific, like reseller specific questions when it comes to filing taxes. So there will be a portion at the end where I do ask Paul some of maybe those kinds of questions, or just ask him for like more tax tip, like tax filing or tax season tips, if you will. And so do make sure that you stay tuned till the end to kind of hear some of his wisdom and just information that he has, again, from someone who's actually an accountant, because I think that's the key. Like, the laws and the rules, and obviously just that by itself may not be enough in terms of if someone really has some weird situations, they might need to actually speak to a personal accountant and get some more information. But just some kind of good, like broad tips for resellers, we'll have that towards the end. So would you say that, is there any type of reseller that maybe My Reseller Genie isn't a good fit for? Or do you think it really could work for anyone?
So I think that a lot comes back to inventory and how you handle inventory. Generally speaking, people fall into cash inventory method or accrual inventory method.
Are you going to explain what these terms are?
I was about ready to tell him the same thing.
I was like, we can just pretend we're all on an even playing field here with these terms.
Okay. So like the first thing I'll say is that these technically they're not real accounting terms, but they're commonly used to mean two different things in the reselling community. So if somebody says cash inventory method, what that means is they record an expense when they buy inventory. And if they say accrual inventory method, it means they record the expense when they sell inventory. So it's just when you're recognizing an expense. So if you fall into the accrual group, it's a little bit more complicated to track, but it's more accurate in terms of the information it produces. What I would say is for a reseller who honestly operates more like a traditional retailing business where they have consistent products and they have vast quantities of them, MRG isn't really set up for that. I think there's better solutions for that out there. But again, that's more of a traditional retail model. And that's not what My Reseller Genie was created for. It's atypical for resellers, but people definitely do it.
Yeah.
But My Reseller Genie, it does support both the accrual inventory method and the cash inventory method, which is where most resellers fall into. There's all sorts of things that people do. And so if somebody's like watching this video and they're like, oh, well, that I don't know where I fall in, or I know I do this and it's different from what Paul's talking about right now, you can always send us an email to support@myresellergenie.com. But I would say for most reselling situations, we will have you covered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think sometimes people, I think you said it earlier, Faith, like you said, you feel like your problems are very unique and I must be the only one dealing with this, or I must be the only kind of reseller who resells in this way. But you guys have worked with a lot of people. You've kind of seen it all. And the best way for them to figure out if this is a good fit for them or not would be to talk to you. So, and I will have that email and just kind of even like instructions on how to sign up and all that kind of stuff. I'll have that in the description of the video so you can check that out. I'll also have, and I'll put it here too, I'll put this little banner. And if you want to save 15% on your first month at Reseller Genie, you can use my coupon code. That'll be down in the description as well. I had a really good question, but then I was promoting myself, so I lost it. It's like,
While you're remembering, Becky, let me just
Yes.
just add on what he was saying. I would say that for about 95% of resellers, we can help them. I'm throwing out a number a little bit, but just way more often than not. Like,
Yes.
My Reseller Genie is a fantastic solution for me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Awesome. And can you remind me, it is obviously something that you can use online, but there's no app for it, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
There's not an app for it, but you can access it from your phone or your iPad. Anything is internet enabled. Not every feature is going to be as great on a smaller screen, but
Until we get an app.
until we get it. Well, I mean, still, like,
when
there
you're
are
dealing with
limitations to
accounting.
smaller screens. Like if you're looking at dashboards and stuff, small screens are not meant for dashboards. Dashboards are meant to be larger so that you can gain insight. But sorry, my nerd is coming out a lot.
Over here, Becky.
Listen, some people are here for it. Some people are geeking out, nerding out with you.
Yeah, so there's not an app right now, but you can use your phone.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's pretend that there are people watching right now who are like, you know what, I need this in my life. How do they get started in terms of is there a way to just put a ton of information in from, let's say, right now it's February of 2024, but let's say they want all of the information from January and February of this year, or maybe even all of the information from 2023 because they need to file taxes for 2023. Can you talk us through what that initial setup looks like and maybe how much time it takes, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the reasons why we were super excited to have this meeting with you, like right now, is because just this week we actually launched a new setup feature. So our answer, like if we were talking to you like a couple weeks ago, our answer would look a little bit different. But as of right now, this new setup feature is absolutely fantastic. Think of it as like an interactive guide, an interactive setup guide that's going to guide you through from start to finish, excuse me, on how to get all of your data into Genie from any and all selling platforms. So it's kind of like this list of questions, that you will interact with, and it's also going to help you bring in your expenses. Were you going to add something?
No, I just like looking at you.
Oh, sweet. Yeah. As far as timing goes, it's really going to totally depend on the reseller. If you're selling on 6 different platforms, versus 2, your setup is going to look a little bit different. But I will say that we did push out the interactive setup guide to beta testers, and pretty much all of them, they were able to just fly through it. And we were super excited about that because, we're always working on getting better. We're always working on making the software more intuitive and user-friendly. So.
Yeah.
Awesome. And so you're talking about almost like a tutorial on how to do all of the things that you need to do to get all of your information into My Reseller Genie. And what are the kinds of things that they need to get inside of My Reseller Genie in order to get it working the way that it's going to be useful for resellers?
Sure.
Yeah, awesome question. So there's kind of 3 big picture categories. So 1 is sales, 2 is expenses, and 3 only applies for some people is inventory. So like if you track inventory, you got to get your inventory in Genie. But if you're using the cash method where you don't track inventory, you don't need to
worry about it.
Yeah, don't need to worry about it.
Awesome. And so it's just a matter of like pulling reports and stuff from, let's say you're on eBay, you got to pull your sales reports from like a certain time frame, pull your sales reports from Poshmark and things like that, which I think is kind of a nice way to take us into, if you could talk about, because there's different levels, there's different tiers of My Reseller Genie to, again, kind of even cater a little bit more specifically to each person, because some people really may just want the I just want to come home from the thrift store and enter in everything that I got, or just like keep track of my sales. Some people might want a more automated approach to, doing their bookkeeping for their reseller or for their reselling business. So if you could talk us through maybe how the tiers are a little bit different. You can even kind of talk price points a little bit. And I know you kind of have some exciting news too, as far as automation is concerned. Just kind of the more capabilities that you have with that now.
Yeah, for sure. So right now we have 3 pricing tiers, and it starts at $9.99 a month. Then the middle one is $14.99 a month, and then the ultimate is $19.99 a month. And the best way to just summarize the difference between, think the higher up you go, the more automation you're going to get. Mm-hmm. So basic it's exactly what it says, basic, but really it's super, super basic in the sense that if you're a hobby seller and you're really not trying to grow your business, and if you're not worried about tracking your expenses, because the basic plan does not have expense tracking, that would be a good option for you. Again, that one's $9.99 a month. And then you bump up to the premium, which is about $15 a month, and you're going to get bank integration with that. So if you want to connect your credit card or your PayPal account, you can do that. And we also have extremely robust sales analytics with the premium account too. And then with Ultimate, which is our highest tier, it's $19.99 a month, and that's where we're always adding more integrations and automation. Did you want to talk about the integrations? Or Becky, I'm sorry, did you ask us to explain the integrations yet? Or
yeah, I think because when we talk about automation and integrations and things like that, that's what people are paying for, right? Because they don't have to manually pull these reports now from Poshmark or eBay or wherever. Although, if it's not, whatever platforms are not integrated, they still have to do that. They have to manually do it. But you have a couple platforms now where it's automatic, which is, it saves, that extra step, and it just kind of does it on its own. And by the way, I don't know that anyone has mentioned this, but My Reseller Genie at I think, is it premium and the level above, you can use it as a Chrome extension. Is that what it is?
Oh, gotcha.
Oh yeah, good question. So this kind of relates to our integrations.
Yes.
So there's a Chrome extension for My Reseller Genie that allows you to integrate with your Poshmark account.
Yes.
So for every plan, you are able to connect your Poshmark account when you're getting started to pull in past data. For the
Which
ultimate,
is really nice.
It is really nice. It really helps with setup speed.
Mm-hmm.
For the ultimate plan, you can continually pull in your new Poshmark sales, refunds, fees, but that's just on the ultimate plan.
Mm-hmm.
And same goes for eBay. Everyone can pull in their past data, but then to get the daily syncing, you would need the ultimate plan.
And I think what was really powerful about that, when we talked earlier, I think you had stated, both eBay and Poshmark are going to send their sellers a report saying, this is how much money you made on our platform this year. But it's not 100% accurate, because they're not taking into account canceled sales or returns and things of that nature. And I think you had said, if you're able to kind of show the data and the proof of, they're saying I made this much, it was actually a little less than that. And here's the proof of that. It's because there were some returns. It's because there were, some of these other issues. And that's something you can kind of present as you're filing your taxes as well. And that's really powerful, because that's kind of hard to keep track of for your average reseller. I resell on the side. I have a full-time job. I have 2 kids that I have to force to practice piano. And I have, all these, there's a lot going on in our lives without also having to remember to erase some money from our, big picture number because of a return or something. I think that's really powerful too. And you're saying that it's called the ultimate plan or ultimate tier, right? With that, it's just going to automatically do that work for you without you even having to think about it. And that's what I think makes it so powerful and worth the extra money, because you're paying for, again, that peace of mind, but you're also paying to save time, save any brain energy of having to think about these things. And that's really cool. Just very smart, to think through those things on behalf of resellers. So thank you for doing the Lord's work. So for myself, I am not super tech savvy. Can you speak a little bit to like, do you feel like resellers have to be really tech savvy to get the most out of Reseller Genie? What happens if they run into something where they're like, I don't know how to do this. Like, I don't know how to access this or whatever. Talk us through a little bit for those who are a little weary because we're like, I'm never going to be able to figure it out.
Sure. And that is a fantastic question, because I think that there's a lot of angst, around that, especially if you're signing up for something and it's a subscription, which, by the way, you can cancel anytime. But once you mentally feel like, oh no, I'm taking this step and then I can't get out of it. What if what if I have issues and stuff? So the short answer is, especially with this new feature, very, very intuitive. Very easy to use. And I'm telling you that from somebody who is not tech savvy. Now, with that being said, I will say that with learning anything new, there's going to be a learning curve and there's going to be an adjustment period. And especially when it comes to accounting, because I feel like for most of us resellers, it's not just learning a new software, but it's also learning some of the terminology that maybe we're not used to talking about, like what is a P&L report, or what is cash inventory versus accrual inventory, and just things like that. So I would say what to expect. Give yourself grace, give yourself time. If you start to get frustrated, definitely take a break. What Paul said was that's the setup process, like getting all of your data in from the past, or if you wanted to get in 2023 data, that of course is going to take the longest amount of time, because that's 12 months of data. But then moving forward, it is so simple, so easy. And then again, not to mention with the new setup feature, just getting in is very easy. But all that to say, it's going to be a little bit more time consuming in the beginning. But if you run into an issue, if you're not sure what something is, there's a couple things I'll say. One is that we have these little info icons all throughout the app. So if you just hover over those, they're actually going to explain what either a feature does or what a word means, or some of that terminology. And that's really, really important to us, because we're not just on a mission to help resellers have an easy way to account for their businesses. Like, we also want to educate, because like once you know some of this stuff, and I'll just tell you from my experience, 8 years ago, I didn't know what any of this meant. Yeah. And it felt paralyzing, Becky. And I don't know what to do. But now, knowing some of these things, and then, some family members sometimes, like they'll hear us on a recording and they're like, whoa, Faith, you actually know it. Like, you're really smart. And I'm like, well, no, I'm not. But like, I have learned. And that's so empowering and so exciting. So I just got derailed. All right. What I was saying with those info icons is that we don't just want to, give resellers a good way to account for their businesses, but we want to teach you guys some of this stuff and give you guys the tools that you need to understand what you're doing. So there's that. And then the second thing I'll say is that our customer support is absolutely fantastic. So if you, if you run into a problem, if you want to email us, like we always respond within 24 hours. And then we have a load of different support resources. Like, we have a dedicated YouTube channel with walkthrough videos and tutorials. And I won't bore you with any more of that, but like pretty much any social media, channel that's out there, we're on. So yeah, customer service is really, really important to us.
That's amazing to hear. And I think sometimes there's a fear with trying to, sign up for something like My Reseller Genie or whatever, when it feels like, oh, it's a 2-person company, like they're never going to get back to me or whatever. But even, that promise of like within 24 hours, like we're going to be there to help you, and knowing that there are these resources available online and whatnot. And we'll put the links to like the YouTube channels and all their social media. We'll have that in the description as well, so that you can, check them out there too, if you need to, in order to make a educated decision as to, if you feel like this is a tool that you can use for your reselling business. But yeah, I mean, even when I think about when I took a group of students to Disney at the end of 2023 in December, and they were doing all this fundraising, and I was trying to keep track of how much each kid had raised. I had a Google sheet. It was very very basic. And I had a mom of a student who is an accountant, and she was like, are you okay if I just like take this information and like make it more robust? And I was like, please, because literally I didn't know how to do formulas. I just like would type numbers. And so I had them in one place, and I think that's where a lot of people are. I think they're just making do with the little limited knowledge that they have. spreadsheets are hard, like, so just the fact that this is like a spreadsheet, but like I mean, it's like, it is, like you said, gonna just help this side of reselling, which most people feel like are just not very fun. Although, Paul, for you, this is probably where you're like, yeah, let's go. You're like, you go source for stuff, and I'm going to sit here and do this. But this is what's going to help that part of it be less paralyzing, and help people just kind of tackle their taxes a little faster. Is there anything else that you feel like would be helpful for us to know about My Reseller Genie before we talk about maybe just a few like tax specific things?
I think the one last thing I would just say is that the product it's a living product. So like we're constantly improving it and making it better.
Mm-hmm.
It was great when we started to have the reseller and the accountant, because, I could learn about her business and, build features around that. Now we have a whole bunch of resellers who tell us about, hey, here's what I'm doing, help me out. And so then we can continue to build and help more and more different types of resellers based on how they do their businesses.
Yeah, adding more features and all of that.
Our focus is improving usability and automation. Those are kind of our two big features. We want things to be easier and faster.
Yeah, so more integrations and stuff.
And who doesn't want that, right? So that's amazing.
One of the last things that I would mention too, because some people can, think that just because we have the eBay and the Poshmark integration, what about all these other selling platforms? So one of the amazing things about Genie is that we are compatible with any and all selling platforms. So let's say that you sell at an antique booth, right? Or you sell a pair of sneakers to your neighbor across the street. Like you can add all of that into Genie, because like what is good accounting if it's not comprehensive, right? Because we want to be tracking all of our numbers, not just a few of them. So like Paul said, we are working on adding more integrations, more automation. But I just wanted to emphasize that while we do have automation for eBay and Poshmark, you can still add in, all the information from your other selling platforms. And we have some tools to make that process faster, like with bulk uploads and things like that. So
that's awesome. Yeah, I think there are a lot of a lot of softwares and different things out there, but it is difficult for some people to use because it's not compatible with every platform or every selling experience. So the fact that it's open-ended, it's wherever you sell, we will support it. That's huge. Well, let's take a moment to talk about taxes specifically for resellers. And actually, Faith, let's start with you, because I would love to hear from you first about what you feel like you've learned since starting your reselling business, because I think a lot of people can relate to like not having an accounting background and like having to kind of learn things as you go. But like, how has learning about that side of things changed how you run your business? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What tips do you have just as a reseller, like a normal human being with not such a mathematical brain?
Can I just share maybe a best practice that I've learned that works? This is going to sound super elementary, but I'm, Becky, you and I, we're on a similar wavelength here.
So are many people watching this video right now. Yes. Yeah.
Again, it's going to sound super basic, but consistency is so important. What I have learned through my reselling journey is that as soon as you make that sale, or as soon as you go out and you buy that inventory, update, your Genie or whatever accounting software you use, because if you're not doing that, you're really going to pay for it later when you have to play catch up at tax time. And it's never fun. Even with people who have a system, if you have to go back and, bring in 12 months of data, like that's just not going to be fun for anybody.
Yeah.
But the other benefit, and Paul kind of touched on this at the beginning of our time with you, is that you can use that information to help you and to help you make better business decisions. And like we've gotten testimonials, from different users, as they've looked at their analytics and Genie, and they're seeing these trends, or they're seeing, oh my goodness, I thought this was going to be a really, really great purchase. Actually, really bad. And like you can analyze that. And so the consistency that you put into the accounting into the accounting part of your business, that's really going to help and aid you with growing your business, especially if you're looking at the data. So that's more of like a a best practice with running a business. But unfortunately, I feel like a lot of resellers don't they're not consistent with tracking their numbers. And I'm just going to tell this to you guys, and I love you all. I can tell you this because I was one of you when it comes to this part. This is just a basic part of running a business, just tracking your numbers. And it's important. So
yeah. And I think everyone has seen businesses fail, whether it's brick and mortars, whether it's, and sometimes businesses don't work out just because they don't work out for whatever reason, but sometimes it's because they're not paying attention to the numbers. They're not consistent on a daily basis with looking at their numbers and allowing those numbers to dictate what kind of choices they're going to make, and they run themselves into the ground. And you're right. I think there are a lot of resellers out there who think they're doing better than they are, or who have misconceived notions of how they're doing on certain platforms or with certain, types of product or whatnot. And it's just because they don't know how to look at their numbers, and it's because they don't have a system for it. And, I like, Paul, how you said when you had to ship for Faith at one time, it was easy because she had a system in place. And I think it's building that system in and building that habit in your daily reselling task list of things to do, which is hard to do at the beginning, but once it becomes habit, now it's just how you resell, so I think that's a great tip. It is elementary, but if you don't have that foundation, you don't really have anything to build off of. So I think that's where you have to start. That's great. So Paul, you are, amongst the three of us, the accounting expert, and you can still keep it simple, because I think that will help people. I have a specific question for you about taxes based off of something that you guys said, and then I want to just kind of let you share whatever you want to share regarding taxes that you feel like might be helpful for resellers. Faith, you had mentioned that, you had mentioned the example of you can, if you sell a pair of shoes to someone down the street for $25, you can log that into Reseller Genie. If you sell something on Facebook or in your antique booth, you can log that. I guess my question to you, Paul, is what happens if you don't? Or I think some people feel like, I don't need to keep track of that. That's that's just this little thing. Is that something that is common practice that accountants are like, no, you need to keep track of even all those little things? Can you talk us through that sort of thing? Because I think there are a lot of different schools of thought when it comes to that.
Yeah. So you would need to keep track of that. That would be the legal thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the ethical thing to do. You're in the business of reselling for a profit.
Mm-hmm.
And we owe taxes based on the profits that we make. So it's not a situation of just like you're a person who has a pair of shoes and you sell one pair of shoes in the entire year. It's part of your business. Mm-hmm. So the right thing to do is to record it, to report the income, and to pay taxes on it. I know some people are going to disagree with me on that. That's cool, but that is the right answer.
Yeah. And I could see a lot of people disagreeing in the sense of who's going to find out, there's no paper trail or whatever. Right. But you're right. That's the ethical right thing to do. It was kind of what's the official, I don't know. I just wanted to kind of hear it from someone. So is that different from someone who they wear a different size shoe now, and now they're selling all their old shoes? They're not a reseller. They're just trying to make back some money from what, they previously owned. Should they also report those, that income?
Question. That's really
sure.
Good question.
Yeah. I mean, it's like it's the gray area, because then, if I say, oh no, they shouldn't, then it's like, so at what point do you start reporting it? Mm-hmm. So what I would say is if you're in the business of making money in a certain way, then the profits from that business are taxable. If, I think if you're selling off personal items, it's, see, this is tough because then people I have a collection of, 20,000 baseball cards or whatever. Yeah. And I started selling those. I would say that if your personal sales are starting to get to a point that you're asking, questions, you should probably talk to an accountant about it, for guidance on the specific situation. Mm-hmm. But if you're just selling a couple pairs of, personal shoes and, you're not a reseller, then no, you wouldn't be paying taxes on that because you're not in that business.
Yeah. Interesting. That's an interesting like division of okay. And I was just curious. That has nothing really. That last question had nothing to do about reselling, but it
A
was
lot of
just
people do that. So yeah.
yeah, it was just kind of what's the distinction. Awesome. Well, I'd love to hear from you, just kind of, especially like you said, your experience with faith 8 years ago and being like, oh, like simple things that, just normal people don't really think about or know. And then also, with the experience that you guys now have from talking to many, many, many resellers, what are some tips that you can share as an accountant for resellers as they get ready for tax season?
Yeah. So I think the most fundamental thing that resellers need to figure out is how you're going to account for your inventory, because that's like your entire business revolves around inventory. And so a lot of your accounting is also going to revolve around it. And if you don't start with knowing, here's how I'm going to do it, everything's going to be confusing after that. We talked, earlier about cash inventory where you expense it when you buy it, and accrual where you expense it when you sell it.
And let me interject real quick. If even that is confusing you, just give it some time. And I mean, whether or not you choose to Google it online, or if you wanted to read our help articles, which we have lots of, we break all that down for you. So I don't want anybody listening thinking, wait, it's like I hear the words that you're saying, but I can't really register. Like, what does that look like?
Yes. To be so honest with you, I started like ADDing just a little bit. Like you were like saying all these things, and I'm like, but I'm like, oh my God, this is so like heavy and like it does not mesh well with my brain.
Yeah, and I'm like that too. So
Yeah.
I guess I just want to say, there's resources out there to just help you make sure that you understand that. And now, like, I totally get it. So it's very possible. If I can understand it, you can too.
So please keep going. Like if my eyes glaze over, I promise I'm like trying so hard.
You wouldn't be the first person. You won't be the last. I don't take it personally.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I promise. I'm trying so hard. Ooh, okay. Yes, keep going.
Yes, I mean, figure out how you're going to account for your inventory and then build your system based on that. So the cash inventory method, it's simpler because you're just recording the expenses, whenever you buy it. The accrual method can be more complicated. Genie, you just fill out some forms and we do all the math for you. But with the accrual inventory method, you need to like calculate beginning inventory balance, purchases during the year, and ending inventory balance.
It can be a real headache if you don't have that automated.
Yeah. So like, don't get too focused on the details of what I just said there, because I know the eyes are going to glaze over. But the IRS does use those numbers, does use those three numbers to calculate your cost of goods for your inventory if you're using the accrual inventory method. So start there. Start with inventory. Let's see what else.
Deductions.
Yeah. So deductions, I'll give kind of two general guiding principles with deductions and figuring out, is this something deductible? The first principle is, was it for business use? And if you have something that's like split, you use it partly for business, partly for personal. For example, like your cell phone, pretty much every reseller is using their cell phone. It's like, well, I pay for data every month. You can allocate some of that expense to your business. So don't just write the whole thing off for business expense because you're also using it for personal, but come up with an allocation that you can justify for this much of my cell phone bill is a business expense. Yeah. So is it business use? If it's, fully for business use, then generally speaking, it's fully deductible. If it's partially for business use, then generally speaking, it's partially deductible.
Is it as simple as like, so for example, the space that I'm in right now, it's in our basement. It's an unfinished part of the basement. Is it as simple as saying it's this many square feet and that's this percentage of the entire house? And so I'm going to like say that this much of, I don't like the mortgage, whatever it is. Like I just know I've talked to my accountant about it. Like he's like, what's the square footage? And that's how you would figure out how much of it that you can what's the term? Claim, not claim, like deduct, the deductible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if it's 50-50 with your phone, 50% is for reselling, 50% is for personal use, then you can deduct 50% or whatever. Is that kind of the general?
Yeah, that's a very reasonable explanation for why you deducted 50% of your phone plan. If you just so auditors are actually people. I know not a lot of us think that because we've never interacted with one, but they are actually people. And so if they're looking at the same thing you're looking at, and you explain, okay, here's how I got to this. If it's reasonable, they're probably going to say, okay, that's reasonable. So try and be objective when you're doing these allocations. Don't keep justifying in your head and moving further and further away from reasonable. Just come up with something reasonable and stick to it. And that kind of ties into the second principle. So first principle is was this for my business? The second principle is if I were a business owner where an employee made this purchase, would I be comfortable with them having made this purchase? So that's kind of another litmus test for helping you hold yourself accountable and be yeah, this was a business expense.
That's smart. I like that. Yeah, using that as, like you said, your litmus test. That's smart.
Yeah. So I think those two principles can really help you identify your business expenses for the most part. There are some things that it helps to talk to an accountant about. Like, for example, claiming part of your house as a deduction. That can get a little more complicated with the calculation. But yeah, for most things, those two principles will serve you well.
Yeah. And, we do have expense tracking on the top 2 tiers of Genie. And there's a place, where you can track all those deductions. And you can even add, other general ledger accounts, so if there's an item in there, I think we have pretty much all the main ones that a reseller would need, but, you can add your own, if your accountant says, oh, no, you can actually deduct this too. You can go ahead and add that in Genie too. So.
Yeah, and I think something that you guys had mentioned earlier, and this was exciting to me. I think you said starting with is it Premier? Is that the middle one? I'm just Premium. I'm just making things up now. I'm making up tiers for you guys. But I think you guys had said starting with that, you can integrate bank information, and because I know when I sit down to do my taxes, I look at credit card spend, and I look for all of the goodwills or all of the when I've had to make big purchases, like for YouTube, when I purchased a camera and I saw that, that's kind of how I would go through and start figuring out what things I could write off as deductions. But the fact that you can see all of that through Reseller Genie and just kind of plug it in, that's pretty powerful too. Again, it's taking out an extra step, and it's allowing you to just kind of get to the source of the information a little bit faster. Just really smart thinking through and through as far as how to make taxes just not as sucky as they need to be, and just to have all of the information generally in one spot. But like you said too, having the ability to create those different ledgers of oh, this is something that could be a write-off, then let me add that here and just kind of keep that in my head. And then you can refer to that later, and having that system in place where that's just a daily thing that you're doing so that you're not trying to remember all of the things in February.
I did have one other thing I wanted to bring up. So this is just a best practice for once you've filed your taxes. I highly recommend printing off details for all of the deductions that you have claimed. And what I like to do, I keep a copy stored on my computer, and then I email myself an email with all the backups for everything that I claimed. So if I ever lost my computer or something like that, I could go to my email and pull down, okay, here's the justification for everything that I put on my taxes. So that's just a best practice I would advise people to do.
That's super smart. I did have one more question. You hear of resellers who just file the one time per year that they're supposed, the normal time that all normal people do. But then you also hear of resellers who do a quarterly tax. Quarterly, I don't know what it's called, filing of their taxes. what is the reasoning behind doing it once versus 4 times? Is there something that's kind of more recommended for the average reseller? I personally have moved to 4, and that's only because my accountant said you should move to 4. And I was like, okay, like if you say it, I'll do it. But I don't really understand why. I just do it because he's like, that's what we should do. I'm like, all right. And if you could speak to that a little bit, so I'm a little more educated, as you know, in regards to my life choices.
Sure. Yeah. So your first year where you're making like self-employment income, I think generally speaking, people don't file quarterly taxes, and I don't think you get penalized for that in your first year. But then after that, so like think about if you have a W-2 job, your employer takes out taxes and then sends them to the government for you, right?
Mhm.
But if you're making your own money from eBay, Poshmark, wherever, nobody's taking the taxes out for you. And so that's why quarterly payments exist. It's telling you, hey, you should take taxes out of what you're making and pay it forward, so that when you get to the end of the year, you don't have this massive tax bill that you can't afford.
Mhm.
And the way they try and enforce that is by charging penalties if you are outside of a certain range. So like if, I don't remember what the exact range is, but say you owe $10,000 in taxes. They're like, okay, well, if you owed 5, then it would have been okay, but 10 is too much to have not paid. So we're going to charge you a penalty on that $5,000 that you're over. So it's just a penalty situation. Some people don't care, and they're just like, I'll just pay the penalties.
Just file
my taxes once and not do any prepayments, but that's all it is.
Yeah, and I think you described it so perfectly in the sense of a typical job with like a W-2. You're just looking forward actually to your tax return because you're going to get something back. And I remember the first time that I made a sizable income from reselling and YouTube and all the extra things, when my accountant told me how much we were going to owe, I was like, what? Like, why am I doing this? And like, it really felt like the government was robbing me, And so what we've started doing as a family is like, every time money comes in, like we put this, we take out a certain amount and give it to church. And then I think we take out like 30 or 35%. And my husband just like puts it somewhere. And then when my accountant says, okay, this is the amount that you have to write the check for, usually we have put away too much. And then we have some claim. That's like our tax return. We're like, yay, there's like $1,000 left in there. Yeah, because otherwise, if the money's in your bank, you really think that's all mine, because that's how we're kind of conditioned to think. So that's really helpful, I think, for people to know the way that you describe that, of just like, you're gonna owe that same amount that typically jobs will send to the government for you. That is, I think, always a huge shock to people the first time they have to pay their taxes.
Oh yeah, it's a punch to the gut. My first time I was like, what? It was painful. It was just not cool. I did want to mention something else, and it sounds, like I'm plugging my product a lot. I do believe in My Reseller Genie.
Well, and that's what we're here for, right? Like, we're here for you to plug the product.
But at the same time, different people are going to, use different things. But I will say that issue is one of the things that we wanted to take into account when we created Genie. And so we actually have a built-in income tax estimating.
Oh, wow.
So, and again, it's an estimation, but you can actually go up into your profile settings and put, 30% or 35% or, whatever your accountant or your state laws would say. And Genie's going to do all those calculations for you off of all your sales. And so it's going to show you, like in a chart, okay, this is the estimation of what you might owe come tax time. And that's like one of our customers' favorite features, because like, if you see it in your bank account, you think, oh, it's mine. And I'm just, that has happened to me so many times, but it's like, you need to be thinking, okay, no, actually a third, is like not mine.
Which it does seem so wrong, but I mean, that's really what it comes down to. That's how much they're going to ask from you. So man, those are very amazing tips, and just really, I think, helpful for resellers to know, really, like, just for anyone running a business to know. But like we talked about, I think resellers get really excited about sourcing and making the sale, and these things just kind of fall by the wayside. And I think hopefully if anyone takes anything away from this conversation, it's that these things have to be front and center when it comes to growing your, or even sustaining your business. And My Reseller Genie makes that easier, which is why it exists. And usually the best products are born out of necessity. They're born out of, there is a problem and we have found the solution for it. And I think that that's what you guys have done for the reselling community. So thank you for that. Thank you for your time. I have somehow managed to take up more than an hour of your time in the filming of this interview. You guys are amazing. Like I said, I will have all of the information in regards to the product, how you can sign up for it. Again, shameless plug for me, but you can save 15% on your first month if you use that code right there. I'll have links to all their socials. And if you have more questions, it seems like they're very open to you just reaching out, whether it's through email or DMing them on Instagram or something like that. But thank you guys so much for being on, because this is something that people are thinking about right now. And I know it's kind of giving me more peace of mind too, as we head into tax season. So thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been great
You
talking
guys
with
are awesome. All right. Well, we will see you guys in the next one. Definitely hit subscribe if you enjoyed this video. And if you want to learn more about reselling in general, thank you for watching, and we'll see you later.